This podcast is a 98 Studios production.
Today's the day, baby.
Today's the day.
Today's the day.
Today's the motherfucking day.
Today is the day.
Today's the day.
Today is the day.
Today's the day.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to Today's the Day with Zack Anderson, as always. And today's a special episode. There's very few people that come on here that have known me over a decade. Very, very few people. And known me back in like my pre-adult life. And this is one of them. So before I'll explain all that, we'll give a little intro. But first and foremost, K-Swiss, thank you for being here, bro. I know you're busy. I appreciate it a ton.
Hey, I appreciate it. It's a big honor. This is one of the coolest shows in the game today, and it's a big deal to get the chance to be on it. So I actually want to thank you for having me.
We're stoked. We're stoked to have you, and I'm stoked to have you for a few reasons. You've played a bit. You played a really big part. In fact, I probably owe, and I'll dive into exactly why in a minute. But I probably owe. I'm going to leave a cliffhanger. A lot of my success in door to door to you, and I'll explain why. But before that, I have known you since I was 15 years old. You were taking pictures for us at our school dances. You were the photographer. You're the guy that everyone's like, we got to get K-Swiss, and I'm broke, and they're like, we got to pay his bill. And I'm like, okay, someone front mine. I'll get you in 2 weeks, whatever. And we got you, and you shot, I think, 3 of my proms.
Yeah.
3 of my 3 proms, multiple of my dances. We connected there. I literally applied for a job underneath you. You didn't give me the job. Spoiler alert. That's why I owe you a lot of my success, because that's why I got into what I got into. We'll get into that story. But, dude, I'm just stoked to have you. I'm stoked to go break it down, because I've never gotten to sit down. And, like, we've had a lot of really deep conversations, but it's very different. When you sit down and you're on camera, you can't be on your phone. You can't break focus. Yeah. And it's like, we got to find something to talk about for an hour, which we could probably find stuff for 3 hours. But
well,
I'm really excited.
I was going to say, it's funny. I haven't thought about that in a bit. But, I mean, everyone loves Zack Anderson. And you kind of have a few key individuals. But, you know, it's your boy, pointy eyebrows, Alex's son. It was his connection, and I was working for Alex at the time. And I got the text. It was like, we want to do something really special. We're doing this dinner in the backyard. We're wondering if you get to come take some photos, because I was running media at Vivint. And that started this thing for a handful of years. I always call it Orem royalty. But I would just get these calls from people. A few people came to that shoot, and they're like, we'd love to get the same type. And I must have done, honestly, like 9 to 10 dances. I loved it because it was really cool. I didn't charge a dime. It was just fun being involved. But after a while, it's like, hey, what are you doing tonight? It's like, well, I got another Orem royalty shoot. You know, it's homecoming for whoever. And so people graduated, went to college, and then I ended up like shooting with their little brothers and sisters. Little siblings. So that was a good story.
Wait, did you say you didn't charge a dime?
No.
I got charged.
Oh, you got ripped off by your buddies?
From whoever was organizing the group.
Yeah.
That might have been a Grant move. I need to talk to Grant.
Yeah, you got to talk to Grant.
I specifically remember, I was like, fuck, it was like $50.
Dude, I was literally with, the other day, I was in some business conversation, and they brought up Koi, and they're like, hey, do you know Koi? I'm like, do I know Koi? Yeah, I can see him wearing that pink Rolex jacket next to Zaza in some, urban area in Provo in the back streets at a photo shoot, so those were good times back then.
Dude, that's my guy. I love Koi to death. Dude, so to give a bio on you, you completely shaped the culture of door to door. Like, undoubtedly, that we're going to get into that in detail. And you kind of ran that game, but I want to really get to know, like, because I've never sat down with you and actually asked, like, what is your story up until that point? Like, who's Kevin Swiss? Where are you from? How'd you grow up? And we can get through that. And then I'm super stoked to dive into what you did in your time at Vivint, and then even past that, like, what's next? Because you're not the kind of guy where you're going to go do something and have it be good and have that be your claim to fame. You're going to probably continue trying to do things and doing things until you can't, which is really cool. So I'm excited. That. But who's Kevin Swiss? Where are you from? Give us the breakdown.
Yeah. So I grew up in Sandy, Utah, and, I grew up in a house of 6 kids. I was right in the middle. I was third, and pretty standard upbringing. Had I had great parents, loving parents, did the very best they could. we didn't have a ton of money. Like that wasn't necessarily the strong suit, but like making family the focus and, trying their very, very best to like, instill good principles and values. So that was a pretty normal way, a pretty good part of life, if you will. And
Mhm.
the interesting thing about my path was that, and this happens in some families, and it's a very typical story, but I was a little bit the black sheep. I had, you know, a a bit of anxiety, a bit of ADD, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of weird because we didn't really call it that back then. It was
Mhm.
just sort of like I had a hard time like following the template, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think growing up, I found my way eventually, but I was a skater, I was a snowboarder, and I found myself really actually just really enjoying the social side of where's the action and how can we make it cool. And I did. I would really always felt that desire to be part of opportunities.
Mhm.
And so I kind of went through high school, and to be honest, I mean, I'm the classic story of, man, I wish my parents would have held me back. I graduated at 17. I was a late bloomer anyway, so I was small. I was like it seemed like every sort of uphill with everything kind of wind in your face versus like in your sails. That was just sort of my background. And it's true. Anyone who knows me, it's like they're gonna tell you it's like Kevin had to go to summer school because he ditched class and I had a hard time applying myself. It was just all very kind of challenging. And
Mhm.
then something happened. Right around I finally grew going into my senior year. And I kind of had, the opportunity to be involved in school leadership or athletics or anything like that just never came together for me. But I did start finding my way in this whole skate scene with skating and making videos of those skate videos. And it was actually back then in the 90s, hip hop was started to come into play, and there started to be these industries and culture around sort of the anti normal, like, hey, these are the people that run everything.
Mhm.
There started to be a base of people that were finding their belonging in their community
Cool.
kind of outside of that.
Cool.
And so for me, that kind of, led to, I served an LDS mission, went to Germany. And by the time I came back, I'd combined growing up, getting self-confidence, learning to work, being a leader. And then I just had all these sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, but inborn skill sets and attitude. It just took me about till 21 years old to kind of grow into them.
Yeah. And then growing into those. So I mean, you're an artist. Like
Mhm.
you're an artist. And in a world where you have to fit in a box, it doesn't really work.
Yes.
Right. But it would have been a really cool time period because back in the 90s was when it was it wasn't becoming mainstream to be out of the box, but it was like, hey,
Yeah.
there's a whole new category that's not in the box that still works.
Yeah.
And like maybe it wasn't most widely accepted. Whereas now it's like there's not really a box anymore.
Yeah.
Right. As much. I can't imagine even as much. So getting into going on your LDS mission, getting into the workforce at 21, I mean, like what in that moment, what was your game plan? And I think it's always interesting to ask, especially artists, to ask, like, because everyone wants to create, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, everybody wants to go and do these things, but it's like you got to still kind of have a game plan
Yeah.
with how you're going to do that. And frankly, I was very similar getting out of high school. That was the plan. I
Yeah.
want to be like a creative. I
Yeah.
wanted to be on the video team,
Yeah.
and we'll get to that point in the
Yeah.
story. But like, what was the game plan, and did it work out how you planned?
Yeah. So what was interesting was by the time I came back, it's like almost like I'd been taught and I'd been trained how to become professional. I'd learned how to present myself and I'd learned how to speak. And there's just all these things that you don't realize are deficits. Man, it was rough around the edges when I went out on the mish. I remember I was with this leader that's like, hey, how do you feel it's going? I'm like, man, I've never worked this hard ever. And he's like, I've been taking it really easy on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just had to grow up.
Yeah.
Coming back, and this, I want to say this one sort of attitude about going to college, because I actually think that things are always evolving. And sometimes something that's like, oh my goodness, that's extinct now. We've gone past that. You see it cycle back maybe 1, 2, 3 decades later. And there is a bit of an attitude now with the change of like, well, is doing anything in college worth my time at all? It absolutely isn't. Like, you got to go do this instead.
Yeah.
For me, I believe, and I'm instilling this in my kids and anyone who will listen to me, opportunity is wherever you as a person go and you're like, I'm an opportunist. I'll go find opportunity.
Mhm.
And when I went to school, the social side of just suddenly being around thousands of kids in the same place and getting the chance to meet them and go through that process, that's where I learned everything that has made me have a shot, be successful, and I'm kind of known for in door to door. I was
Mhm.
doing that in student activities. I was
Mhm.
organizing events. I was doing media. I was doing marketing. And a lot of times people are like, hey, we wanted to start this business. So we tried this thing. I did it for the school in college. I did like 2.5 years at BYU Idaho and then came down to BYU Provo. But that whole process. So my plan kind of took off when, because of college, I was introduced to Photoshop. Because of college, I was introduced to, digital video editing at a higher level. I was introduced to, hey, we're going to put on an event. Who's going to be the promoter?
Mhm.
Like those opportunities where it's like I
For sure.
stood in front of crowds of 4,000
For sure.
when I had nothing to do with a year-end awards party for some door-to-door company.
Yeah.
And that came from going to school.
Yep.
And the truth is like I got close to the degree. I was in my senior in the ad lab at BYU, and my media company took off, just like the amazing guys at 98 that produced some of these shows. It took off, and within a year I had I think it was like this was a big deal back then. It was like 155,000 in revenue.
Mhm.
And as a 2-year-old, 23-year-old college kid,
It's like
I
mind-blowing.
literally had more income coming in from the studio than the top manager in all of door to door, who went to Virginia and made like 130. And I
Mm.
was like, this is going to be my thing.
Yeah.
But that came from college and then knocking doors and mixing it together.
Yeah, 100%. And I love having like opposing opinions. And there's obviously
Yeah.
on this show, you've listened to a lot of them. Some people are so anti-college.
Yep.
Some people are so pro-college. I think my view is very, very in between. It's like I think college is absolutely an incredible option if you don't have anything better that serves a purpose. Like there's nothing that I don't like more, because I have a lot of little siblings, like a lot, than hearing my little siblings go, oh, I'm just like a gap year. I don't, unless
Yeah.
you're gonna go fill that gap year with something that's legitimately gonna go change your life. What's the point? And then if like, oh, I'm gonna drop out of college to do this, it's like, dude, that's a part-time job. You don't
Yeah.
need to drop out of college to do that. And college is like the social aspect of college alone, I think, is an insane value add
Yeah.
to people. Like you learn to go and be an adult in an adult world and communicate with adults rather than what you learn in high school. Because you'll see people, and this is one thing that I have a hard time with, people who they graduate high school and then they get married.
Yeah.
And now they're all of a sudden in an adult role, an adult life, and then they have kids immediately. And I'm like, your social education and your like EQ is the level of a high school student.
Yeah.
And now you've got to go and navigate being a parent with other parents, and it's really interesting to me. So I'm actually a big fan of college until it's not serving the purpose that
Zach,
you
it's
want it
like
to.
I could not agree more with you. There's a sequencing, I think, that takes place. And to me, it's about learning to read the room of your own life and pay attention.
Mhm.
Like where I'm working now at New Sun Power, it's like, Jordan Binning, our CEO, he graduated from BYU Hawaii. You could have the conversation with him about, well, what did that mean to the eventual?
Mhm.
And it does have some key meanings, but the core of what he's accomplished has nothing to do with college.
For sure.
But then there are others that it's like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I guess the point is again, I think it's about reading the room in your own situation and
Mhm.
being an opportunist.
For sure.
And like you said, it's awesome. It's like looking at saying, hey, if I do process of elimination, this opportunity to go sign up for classes and go do this thing is like it's my best opportunity and I need to take it at this time. Or if you look at it, it's like that time is the most valuable asset. That is squandering my time. College is off the table. I'm doing
Yep.
this other thing.
100%.
Like it's about reading the room of your life.
No, 100%. I love that. And I think it's so valuable. And it's also like, if your purpose of going, a lot of people are like, I'm not going to go to college because I don't want to quit. And I'm like, so I'm a dropout. I
Yeah.
did 2 semesters, 70 credits and dropped out.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, if you're not going to college to graduate, but you're going to fill time and to go and experience and whatever, then it's not really quitting.
Yeah.
Right. But if you go and you're determined to go get a degree and that's why you're going, go finish what you start for sure. And I also respect that side. So it's all, there's not a right or a wrong way in my opinion. But I definitely think having like a purpose every day
Yeah, I agree.
and just having a plan that you're executing on, even if that plan changes at some point, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So then you're mid-20 or you're early 20s at this point.
Yeah.
Your media company's crushing. You're doing really, really well. So then what's the segue into going and becoming, okay, here's Vivint. That's where I'm going to go attach my wagon. That's where I'm going to go and kind of invest my this next decade or 2 decades or whatever it is, right? Like, that's where I'm going to go and spend all of this time and effort. This is the people I want to be with, the company I want to be with. And then how do you go and turn that into something that's actually substantial? Like, does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, and build a legacy off of it. How do you get to that point from early 20s?
The summary is I was deep into college, and I was doing, my main thing was I was a college student body officer, and I was called the student performances officer, which again plays into what I eventually became professionally. But in that process, it's really, you feel really amazing. You've got a full-time scholarship. You've got stipend on campus. They're paying for a food. I had an office on campus. You're just thinking of a young person. It's like, okay, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's just like anything. It's like you eventually graduate, and I'm the same as you, dropped out. But it's like the concept of it's time to move on. I watched the people who were in the positions before me, and they're like, they literally went to go to pest control, and they're like, we're going to go make money. And that was the thing. In college, once again, it was all kind of still a simulation, You did the ads for campus events. You broke records and came up with ideas and disrupted the system, for campus, but it wasn't actually real in the real world. And so the guys that I look up to that were in the positions I eventually got, they almost, they weren't trying to be rude, but they were kind of like, okay, have fun with the little student thing. Like, we're going to go make real money.
Yeah.
And I was like, why do you got to piss on it? Like, as you're leaving, like, I'm going to go smash what you guys did. Just wait for me. But then it got, planted the seed of like, the clock is ticking, and eventually this needs to lead into something real. And the story I always tell is I had been recruited for a few summers for pest control in Arizona back when it was pretty early on to go make money, but I had no interest because I wanted to go home to Sandy to hang out with my friends. I wanted to go home to Sandy to be with my crew. But then once this is the end of college, I needed money. I needed a plan. And so what happened was eventually I did go knock doors. My rookie year was in Minnetonka, Minnesota. Did it, to be honest, had an amazing experience. Did well, and kind of came back. And back then, if this makes sense, I mean, as a business, Todd's company did 12,000 accounts total at that time. And so there was only like 8 or 9 managers, and I was gunning to be a manager. And back then they didn't even have kind of a standard, I sold, we didn't have same days back then. That's my excuse for like, bad pull through. Cause I sold 109, but only installed like 76. I feel like I would have done a little better as a rookie.
If we had some same days.
Yeah. If we had some same days, it would be nice not to be like, hey, this is an alarm. I hope it goes in on Friday when you sold it on Monday.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, so I go out there and have a pretty good summer, and I come back, and then I didn't even meet Todd until after I'd already worked for him. It was when I came back in the fall, and I was going through Troon Park there on State Street in Orem, and here's Todd. He'd been in the Dominican Republic doing real estate. That's kind of my first connection story there. He's always was interested in this marketing and brand stuff, and there just weren't cameras. There wasn't lights, camera, action. There wasn't websites. There wasn't any media of any kind. And I was doing that at school. I'd done it at school. And so immediately my opportunist looked around, and I'm like, there is a massive opportunity missing here to just pour gas on this whole thing. So when I went into managing my next year, and it was 2003, which, if you know the industry, was really tough because all across the board, all the alarm companies, they implemented the very first activation fee, and it was required, and no one knew how to sell it. Imagine just walking and be like, hey, it's no cost, we'll set you up. And it's like, no, you got to write a check for $99. And the whole industry was petrified. Now, my son, who's knocked for Vivint 3 years, he's like, yeah, my average RMR is like 130 a deal, like fat packs. And we were scared to collect a $99 check.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, I kind of told him, I was like, I have this idea where what if we could do sales trainings and recruiting videos where you take a DVD, and instead of like someone with a training manual or up in front, we could scale it all over the country. And he loved it. And we worked on a project, and essentially he fronted the 15,000 or so we needed for my Apple G4, for the mics we needed, the Sennheiser mics, for the the Sony, P150 digital camera, and I got that in my hands, and I had arrived. Like anyone who knows media back
It was
then,
real life now.
it's like this is the stuff that the pre GoPro, the pre Red Bulls, these individuals that like did snowboarding videos, they had one of those with the handle on it,
Yeah.
like yellow.
How sick that those are coming back too.
Yeah.
How sick.
Dude, I'm so proud of the 90s.
Yeah.
I look at all this with abundance. I'm like, see y'all, like that was the greatest time ever. Bring it back, right?
Yeah.
Let's run that back.
Yeah.
So anyway, but what it led to is that was successful. And then I asked Todd, because the moment I was doing it, I'm like, this could be a business and door to door. And he, being the abundant person he is, he's like, I love it. If this is your dream and this is what you're good at, the fact that being part of my company, as long as you still do stuff for me, go for it. And I'm like, are you, like, in my head, I was like, you just helped create this brand new thing, and I'm going to walk across the street and give it to the guys that are recruiting your people, and you're okay with this? And he was just like, I love it. Like, keep doing killer stuff for us, but if you have a chance to start a business, I want you to start it. And that's the answer to your question of like how that kind of launched into that.
Dude, that's so cool. There's two parts that are really, really cool. The first part is what you hit on, just the vision, like the opportunist in you. And like the thing is, I have a really hard time with opportunists and with people who are like always looking to go start a business everywhere they go. There needs to be substance. There's got to be meat and potatoes, or you're not an opportunist. You're just like a wishful thinker.
Yeah.
Right. So you had to make meat and potatoes. You had however many years of doing this exact same thing for the student body.
Yeah.
And you saw a real opportunity. You presented the opportunity to the right people. That's really impressive, because that doesn't happen very often. Either people are wishful thinkers or they never ever express their ideas. One of the two. There's very, very few people that are in that middle area, which is where things work. The other part that's so freaking cool to me, and like we've had Todd on a few times, we'll probably have him on a few more times, and he's one of my favorite human beings ever, and like most influential people. But it's like, first and foremost, he's a big enough thinker to accept the idea that it might benefit him and invest in it.
Yeah.
Like, and at this time, from everything I've heard about Todd's story, Todd was not a big baller at this point. He was not taking home big paychecks. All the money that the company is making is rolling right back into it, or putting into things that'll help the company.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really, really cool, because it would have been much easier for him to be like, dude, what we're doing is working. Like, I'm going to keep this 15 grand and go pay another manager a little bit more to go a little harder. Right.
And I had no idea, that thing where you're anchoring in a sale or a negotiation.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get laughed out of the room. For me, I was like, I put it together and I was like, I had to be confident. It's like, this is what the bill is.
Yeah.
Will you sponsor this company? Do you want to do this? And he was like, he looked at the value. He saw the possibility of what it could be. And he's like, hey, like you said, this makes sense.
So that's the first thing about him, is thinking big. And that's so, like, it's just inspiring and it's cool. And that's when things happen. Like, that's when something that changes the industry happens, is when someone in that position is able to go and think. And then the second piece is like, abundantly allowing you to go and do it. That is probably more rare.
Yeah.
That is way more rare, because it's so easy to be like, and that's a big reason why on the podcast, or on Today's the Day, I was like, and I've been at multiple companies since starting this podcast. And I've also had people on from like my direct competitors that I recruit against every day.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing is highlighting them, hyping them up, giving them a platform to go and I love it. It's like, it's so freaking fun, because ultimately it also goes and provides a ton of value to the people that I care about and a bunch of people I don't even know. So it's really cool. And I think like having seen Todd think like that over the last 15 years has shaped the way that I think in a big way. And
well, I think too, what's interesting, if you know the founders in Door to Door, and I'm talking like, not even like saying, hey, who were the rock star regionals? And I do view them as
the godfathers.
Yeah, I'm talking about like, Steve Zollman, Chad Christofferson, Todd Peterson, some of these individuals that were actually like really part of those crazy building blocks where Door to Door was established and got the brand of guys serve a mission. They come home, they need to knock doors. It's like, that's actually not what it was. But what I would say is that people just assume, because of Todd's energy, that he's super self-confident. And the truth is, he was comfortable in his skin because of what he had earned. And I just kind of feel like that behavior you're talking about, where people aren't abundant, it's when you actually see the particular level of comfortable in skin they are, and then the insecurities start to come out when it's like, hey, wait a minute, if you do this, you're trying to hurt me. And it's like someone who's truly purebred confident, they can give it away because they know that it's theirs, and when you don't act, when you're not sure that it's yours, you're not sure that you're at that point, your best self doesn't come out in those moments,
Yeah.
And so I think whatever he had needed to do to behave that way, and I think that's some of the beauty of what the job does and what some of these things where we say, hey, it's about what you're becoming, and a lot of those narratives of self-development, just like they say in boxing there's levels, or in leadership there's levels, I think in self-confidence there's levels, and we all kind of find out where we are when it's tested. Why is this person acting so freaking insecure suddenly? Everyone thinks they're super confident, and you just kind of find out, okay, this is where I am. Yeah. And I think in that moment, Todd showed, he was fully calm with where he was. And so he could offer things that were like, why would I be nervous and be like, I need to somehow hedge and keep Kevin in a box so this guy doesn't get me? That's not confident behavior.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. That makes sense. And that's like abundance is another way of saying you're confident enough that there's enough for you, even if they're eating. And like, I agree with that 100%. And I try and live by that, but it's actually hard.
Yeah.
So as this thing is like growing, the part that's so like interesting to me, and it's like fascinating to me, because I got to play a little part in it way later on, or I got to participate in it later on and see what it turned into. As you're starting this company, and then at the time, I don't know if it was Apex or Vivint or either one.
It was Apex.
At the time, it was Apex. Then it just hit this insane trajectory over the next decade or so.
Yeah.
Where this thing like literally took off. It did things no door-to-door company's ever done and still haven't done.
Yeah.
Repeatedly over and over and over and over. And like, at what point did it turn into like, okay, cool, I want to run this channel for this company. This is the one. This is why. And what did that look like? Because it ended up turning into something incredible.
Yeah,
right?
100%. So I'll give you the fast version so we can get to some of the really good stuff. But Todd opening up, being abundant, I ended up having 8 or 9 clients in door-to-door, and they were all the major ones. I did all the media and creative for First Line. I did all the media and creative for Pinnacle, continued to do it for Apex. One of my clients, Atlas, was, the premier like TV company next to iSatellite. That's where I met the Casey Baws, the Jeff Mendez's, the Doug Robinsons, like all these guys. And once I'd done media for them for a couple of years, they thought they were going to do something sneaky. This is the guys at Atlas. And they reached out to me. We were hanging out one night, and they just said like, hey, would you ever consider selling your company? Would you ever consider going exclusive? And I just kind of laughed. I was like, I didn't believe, I didn't think big enough. I was like, that would never happen, because what I'm making working with all these clients, I don't think it would make sense in the numbers for someone to offer me at least that just to work with them. So it wouldn't make sense for them, but for me, I'm not going to give that up either. But they put together an offer, and they ended up actually buying my studio. And I kind of, to all the companies, they're like, we're going to take this away from Alarms, and we're going to take Kevin and what he does and have it just for us. And that was a super cool moment. It was a cool acquisition, and it was kind of crazy and stuff. I took the money. I was able to build the first house, like all that good stuff. But they, like so many, flew too close to the sun. They went away from principle, and they ended up running that company into the ground. But, right around 3 years later or something like that. And a ton of us had kind of gone down that road. And you know how it works in door-to-door. Companies go under, and then it's like, how can we take care of this asset, the sales force?
Yep.
So it ended up with me working my way back. But the difference is during that time, we had innovated on competitions. We had innovated on things beyond
I never
the media.
knew that. That's interesting. That's really, really cool.
The first cup and the first Madison, all that stuff was not at Vivint. It was at Atlas. That was the first year. So when Keith Nellison had seen the ESPN videos, and he's like, how are you doing this thing? Where the guys go knock and the statistics are there, and the next morning there's a video everywhere that they're watching the results. It never existed. That was at Atlas. And so that was his intrigue. And then Todd, we just had a good connection. And so once we kind of talked through that marketing was expanded, that's when they brought me in as creative director in the fall of 2007. And I had the full-time position. And Todd said, your goal is to work with Sean Brenchley and build us a real marketing department. And that's kind of the beginning. And then we went on that run. And then we had the most amazing, of course I have to drop Corey Sistrunk, Damon Price, Jake Larson. And I'm sure I'll forget all these different names, but, Shane Hansen, Adam Metcalf, all these people that brought it to life over the years. I had probably 4 different eras of teams during my 16 years in those positions that did what you described. And that was kind of how it happened and why it happened.
Yeah.
And, it was an amazing experience.
Well, dude, so this is where it starts to get fun because I come into the picture literally exactly a decade later.
Yeah.
The Vivint picture, but I met you, that was 2007. I think I met you 2013, 2012, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was like, I didn't know about Vivint. And then I got into the Provo scene. It's like, I didn't know what Vivint was, but I'd see Vivint events. And then I heard about the whole motocross thing with Vivint. And I was like, what the hell? Like, what is it? And then I saw a picture when social media was just becoming a thing.
Yeah.
I think Facebook probably, I don't even remember.
Web 2 started coming in.
A picture with like the Vivint big block letters with like a bullet bike next to it. And then on the other side, it was like a dirt bike. And I was like, what is even like, I don't even understand what this is. And it was like becoming cool. And then I met you through Grant, right? Through Mr. Pointy Eyebrows, met you. You were shooting our school dances. I've always like loved that world. Like this is where I'm saying wishful thinking, right? Rather than like a opportunist. I was a wishful thinker in the creative world.
Yeah.
I was like, this is sick. Like me and my buddies, you remember Mikey Jarvis, Parker Walston. We started a little clothing company with Grant and Tyler Dial way back when.
Tyler Money Dial.
Yeah, T-Money, bro.
Yeah.
Start selling these t-shirts. They're horrible quality, but it was so cool to me.
I always envisioned you guys walking around the Berkshires as a squad.
Oh yeah, we were a squad, bro. We did squad pics in our merch.
Yeah.
And I was like the least creative one. I didn't know how to go work photo. That was all Mikey.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have the money to go fund it. That was Parker. Like I literally probably brought the least amount of value in hindsight. But I like wishfully thinking, I was like, yeah, dude, we started a clothing company. Like I'm a creative. This is cool. And then fast forward a decade from when you got back to Vivint, 2007 to 2017. I had known you everything. I'm coming up my senior year of high school. I'm like, dude, I want to be like in the creative world.
Yeah.
I didn't have the meat and potatoes. I had no clue how to do anything, right? I had no idea how much effort it takes, but I loved the idea, but I also didn't have the patience. So like it wasn't going to work regardless.
Yeah.
But I still went, I'm like, I'm going to exhaust my resources. I know Kevin Swiss, he took our pictures. He loves Grant. Like he'll hook me up with a job. He runs creative. I went interviewed with you. And like, I don't think you wanted to tell me no. So you sent me to meet with Steven like halfway through the meeting. And I remember like both of you, the questions were the same. Like, yeah, what experience do you have? Like what programs you know how to use? Like what exactly is it that you want to do?
What are some of your skill sets?
Yeah. And I'm hoping to learn.
Yeah.
Like, and I think in your guys' head, as I can imagine now, in the moment, I was pretty butthurt.
Yeah.
As I can imagine, it was probably like, that's what you go to school for, is to get the skill sets and then you come here. But me, I'm like, nah, I just want, like, that's what I want to do as my job. Anyways, long story short, I definitely got told no. I did not get that job that I interviewed for. But I kept connections with you guys.
Yeah.
And in my first summer, I really struggled in sales too. It was really hard. And anyone who listens to my podcast knows that. But then I would come back and I would just hang out with you guys. I'd come to the creative space.
Yeah.
I did my summer, even after I had done 2 and 3 summers and I was a manager and then a regional, I would just go back there. I'd kick it with you guys. I would love to go give my freaking input on whatever. You know me, I'm hyper competitive. So I really, 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 really digested the competition world that you guys create, the sport that you created out of door-to-door sales. That I loved it. I hyper focused on, I fixated. I would probably be the most annoying person ever. Maybe tied with Cade Randall. Going and like questioning the scoring, finding anytime there was a little error in data and reporting.
Well, that was a lot of to 1 a.m, hour and a half phone calls with Zaza when he was, down in the deep South, trying to work through how they could win, why they weren't winning. And, we got text that I'm giving, $100 install bonuses to 70 guys. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to die if we don't win. And so you're going to have that blood on your hands. Yeah.
I
remember.
I probably didn't always stay in the best state of mind, but that's because what you guys created was so compelling. Like, and like, yes, I'm hyper competitive, but if a game is broken, I'm not going to play it.
Yeah.
And like, that's where I got so passionately involved. That's where we got even closer. That's where me and the whole team got closer. I was involved in a lot of the media stuff. I got to see it. It was amazing. And I loved it. But like, it's so freaking cool what you created. And it's like, and the people who really went and leveraged it, this is what I want to touch on. The people who really went and leveraged the media and the competition, or still do, because now there's a lot of great creators out there.
Yeah.
Right? There's a ton.
Absolutely.
they get so much value out of it because it goes and it ignites the competitive spirit in everybody that we've all had since we were little kids playing whatever game you play as a little kid and you get competitive in. And it's really, really cool and it's fascinating and I love it. And like, I guess my whole segment right here is taking my hat off to you. Like, dude, it was so fun to be able to see it even towards the tail end of it still grow.
Yeah.
And then as regulations got put in place, seeing how you adapt and like continue that culture in a regulated space. When you're a publicly traded company,
Yeah.
you can't go and do things the way that they used to be done, right? And that was really cool. And I'm like, it was fascinating. That's really it. It's just like a thank you. It was awesome.
I appreciate that. And it's just, I would just say it never ceases to amaze me, the value that it does create. I've talked a little bit about this in, this last year, getting way outside of what was normal for me into, the next opportunity, the next horizon for me. But we definitely talk a lot about, it never ceases to amaze me how it does work, where I'll pick one anecdote that has to do with you. There's a famous story where Jeremy Bell and Brad Rossiter got in some type of a sort of trash talk match about Elliott versus Zaza or Michael Santiago versus Zaza.
Yeah.
And it turned into the year where it was the greatest story ever. You look at these sports rivalries, and I talk about sports and how it needs that entertainment piece. Elliott was the top office, but Zaza was the top office, and both sides were like, we were the ones that won it. And it was you guys, and then it wasn't
So
close.
you have two stories. You have one of them was my second year up against Michael Santiago, just head to head. When I was a 26 account rep, he was a 90 account rep, and I my hat's off to Michael. He's a unit.
Yeah.
But like that was my whole motivation because Brad and Jeremy made a $5,000 bet on us. And I was like, why are you betting on me? I'm like, you're an idiot. Like if you look at like the over under and the favors here, you're an idiot. That's a terrible bet. But I took it super seriously. And then the next one was so hyper competitive with that. Elliott's literally top 5 best friends ever. Sydney, his wife, best friends ever. And we're getting towards the end of the summer and it's just competing to be the top office in the company. And it's a big deal. And it's like kind of close. And then we find out that Jeremy Bell was fudging numbers on Insider. And then we go and we launch a social media campaign. And I love Jeremy too. So hopefully he watches this, a social media campaign with the receipts. And we're just fully public about it. And my guys can get so trash talky because of me. But to touch on the story, sorry.
But listen, but what I'm saying is, if you know sports, go to the private practice with the Dream Team in 1992 with Magic and Michael, where they make these bets and they talk trash. And it's like, hey, if you don't turn into Air Jordan, we're going to blow you out. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And these stories carry the sport, and I talk about that where, for a minute when we got these big tournaments rolling, you needed the star power. You needed, you have a Mendez come along that just knows how to organize and no one could touch him. And then Trevor Franck comes along and challenges his reign. And then he has his time. And then Benning comes along and challenges his reign. And these storylines go and go and go. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool because when you sit in these meetings and you try and inspire, your people at Meraki, your people at Sunrun, your people with Create, we talk about this all the time where I am. It's just like the guys in front have won championships. The guys in front have been top office. The guys in front have played the sport. And they know that that's what's really going on. And it just brings out everyone's best ability.
Yeah.
And like I'm saying, it just never ceases to amaze me that it works. Like literally, it's like, really? Yeah. This little thing, we're going to do this fun, like kind of win some rewards and stuff and put some motorcycles in a gym. And it's like billions of dollars. It's just weird to me. To this day, I'm like, I still can't believe this is like a thing.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah. And well, like from my perspective, being a participant, not a creator of it, it's like it works because it's like you're building a story. Mm-hmm. And someone told me something I remember. It was like my second year managing. I could not get my guys bought in on competitions. Mm-hmm. Right. I couldn't figure it out. And like some of the best advice I've ever gotten, I'm going to make sure we save enough time to talk about like the next segment because there's a pretty substantial like catalyst that now is leading into a whole next legacy, which is super exciting to watch. But it's like I had the best advice ever. And this is advice to anyone where it's like, oh, my group just doesn't get into competitions. First off, you're an idiot if your mindset is that that's okay. You're an idiot. You're just losing free volume. You're losing it. And you're not leveraging the tools that are given to you. There's a pot of money right in front of you, and you're not leveraging it and picking it up. And I got this advice where it's like, hey, your people, if you are 80% bought into the competitions, your people will be 50% bought in. And I'm like, that's interesting, because I was always like 75% bought in up until this time. What I really cared about was my personal numbers. And that's why that first competition for me that really clicked for me was what Brad was betting Jeremy Bell against Michael Santiago. And I watched his numbers all day, every day. And my whole thing was whatever he does, I do double, period. If that means he gets 1 by 3, I need 2 by 4.
Yeah.
And if he gets a second one, I got to go get 2 more.
Yeah.
And like, I wasn't that good, but I was extremely focused on that. And he probably didn't even check. Like, Michael might not have even cared that year, right? Which is great. But it pushed me. And then as I got to the point where it's like, no, I want my guys bought into the Viper, and I want my guys bought into these things. And then you realize competitions are the company's way of getting people to do what they need to do to go and find the most success.
Yeah.
It's just a tool.
Yeah.
Right? To cater their
100%.
what they're doing and tweak it a little bit so it's more profitable, or tweak it a little bit so it's more sustainable. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. I want my people doing the most profitable, most sustainable things and producing at a really high level. That makes sense. And then I remember I just like took that advice and I was like, okay, Premier League this year, I am going to like start talking about it in February, and I'm going to like highlight it in every meeting. And then I'm going to do that for the Viper, and then I'm going to do it for the Cup. And it was the full conversation. It was up at the front of our room. And frankly, to be super honest, and hopefully this doesn't come across the wrong way, I didn't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go sell my number that year. I wanted my team to sell their number. But I'm like, I'm going to see if leveraging this works. So I talked about it. I got like whatever. And I painted this story about how like, no, we're going to go do it. We're going to go do it big. And we had no business even competing. I think we took 3rd in the Premier League. We shouldn't have even competed.
That's a big deal though.
Yeah.
That's the hardest competition to win.
We shouldn't have even competed.
Yeah.
It was me as a 4th year, my partner as he was my manager at the time, and then the rest were 2nd year reps.
Yeah.
That was it. That's all we had.
Yeah.
And then our new rookies were like, we were like fumbling learning to train rookies still. And it was so, I remember I was like, whoa, like I just had this 2nd year go have his PR week 3 weeks in a row because we've been highlighting this. I'm like, let's try the Viper. Let's see how that goes for the team. And then it's like, holy shit. We're like, guys are not texting me to pick them up at 9.
Yeah.
They're letting me know to pick them up last because they've got a couple of points left.
Winners win.
Right. And then I was like, okay, I'm changing our whole motto. I'm like, Meraki wins. Like, we win and we don't quit. And I promise you don't want to compete against us. And that has been so widely adopted to the point where we now run a lot of internal competitions because I find that pushes.
You have to have
it.
It's great leadership. Yeah.
Competition's incredible and I love it. And you built that, and it was really cool to be a part of and participate. And like, my hat's off to I've met my closest like friends in door to doors because they click like I do. Like a Cade Randall, we didn't connect until we finally got on the phone about a competition where we're like, what's your strategy here? Because we weren't competing against each other. We were in different divisions. And he told me his and I told him mine. I'm like, bro, beautiful. Love it. I learned so much from Cade. Cade's a genius. I love that dude. But it was amazing, dude. And I geek out about it and I love it. So you built this thing at Vivint. It was incredible. It was amazing. Vivint went through a million changes. I love Vivint. I've got nothing bad to say about it. And then you had kind of a catalyst moment where like that all kind of got flipped upside down.
Yeah.
And now you're fast forward. And we talked about it before. We're talking about like literally 12 months ago.
Yeah.
Like almost
like literally
to the day.
this weekend. Yeah. It's 1 year anniversary.
Almost to the day.
Yeah.
Where your whole world got flipped upside down in a way.
Yeah.
And now fast forward a year, it's like, oh yeah, you're fine. Like nothing
all
to worry
smiles.
about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But there's got to be a period in there where that's not all smiles. Like I'm really, really curious on that. And then we'll close it out with like, what's the future? Like how are you gonna go try and have the impact you had the first go round or maybe the second go round because you had multiple before that I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
I love
saying?
it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of serendipity because of the timing. You know, the disclaimer I'll say is that a lot can happen in a year, and we preach something a lot where I work now, which is from Alex Ramosi, which is, you know, losers and victims, things happen to them. You know, winners and heroes, what did you make happen? And so when I tell this story, the way it's described, it probably is going to sound a little bit like, whoa, that happened to you. But the truth of the matter is I really do actually believe that we are the authors of our own situation. And so you really can't take too many things and not say, hey, well, what hand did I have in different outcomes? What were my own inputs? Was I observing them? What was I doing? But the story goes like this. I had been, doing this thing we've been talking about for a little over 16 years. And I was at a point now where as VP, I was training teams. To be honest, it was kind of like a dream to get to kind of, I guess, a certain level I'd been working hard at. But we had just got acquired by NRG, and, everyone was kind of going through what does that mean in their world. But, the door-to-door space, which is where I had worked quite a bit with, it was a little bit separate because it's not something they knew how to do. So it just felt like it was going to be business as usual. But the interesting thing happened where the people that had been running the call centers, the culture for the National Inside Sales Program, which was basically half of the company's business, their model was based on retention of talent. So an individual's PRA would continue to increase the longer they stayed on the job. And turnover was the thing they were battling so much. And so what they found is the very, very best way to actually inspire people want to stay on was culture. And, in a very, very, not, I don't want to say crowded, but in a place where there's just so many people like vying for the decision-making and all those things, the leadership of that team, once the pandemic had ended and kind of they had their big moment, they had their most challenging time ever, and they bounced. And in my mind, it was like, this is the moment. I've been looking for a chance to expand. You're looking for something to chase, something to reinvent, something to innovate on. And it's like, hey, we have the best team. We do the best events. We do the best media. We do the best everything, which is exactly what, that group needs. This will be my chance to like expand and do it for the whole company and not just door to door.
Yeah.
And Todd Santiago is an amazing mentor for me. He honestly has shown up for me in some key places along the way. I really do love him and am grateful for the role he played as kind of my executive through the whole run. Long story short, I kind of had presented and pitched this idea of expanding my role and being able to like expand the team into handling it for all of revenue. And like I said, this has nothing to do with Todd, but I kind of had floated that out there. And then I was coming in for the meeting, on the Monday at 10 a.m. to kind of hear the feedback. Hey, is there institutional support? What's it going to look like? And I came in and was fired. And that was like, like even now, to be honest, it's weird. Like the same ringing I felt in my ears, like when that happened, just even kind of saying it. And I was, kind of at a loss for words. And I was like, wait a minute, like how, what, like, what do you mean this is going to be my last day? And the truth of the matter is that the company felt that it was kind of the right time, to give some other people the chance to come in that, had close relationships with the people running the thing. And there was a little bit of a discussion, I think, maybe that, we'd been having about like, hey, at some point, are you going to stay here forever? What are you going to do? All those things. But I think based on the context for me, we had just had the most successful year in revenue ever in door to door. And like I said, go back to this. Things don't happen to you, right? It's what you make happen. So nothing happened to me. There's no rug got pulled out. There's no floor fell out from underneath me. The universe was saying, hey, this is what, this is where you're going. And, you need to wrap your head around this.
Yeah.
This is real. And so fast forward, I had always said in my mind for years, Zach, when that moment comes, I will hold my head high and I will be so proud of the journey and proud of what we accomplished. I accomplished everything I set out to do. And that's the story that I started to internalize. It's like, wait a minute, like you really have accomplished all your goals.
Yeah.
This is good. This is okay. Like,
yeah.
But when it's happening around you, when you're going through that, dude, it's like Tyson says, you get punched in the face. You have a plan to get punched in the face.
Yep.
And
100%.
so I started, what am I going to do? And when we kind of talked about it, and I'll be vulnerable here, because of the conversation I'd been having with Todd about, hey, at some point, this is going to be what you need to do. You need to go try the open market. You need to go see if you can win a championship without Shaq.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go see if it's Kevin or if it's Kevin and Vivint. That was the truth. And he'd been encouraging me for a bit. And at a certain point, I'll be real. It's like, hey, let me just kind of give you a little shove out the door, And he told me one day I'd thank him. And again, Todd wasn't even there. Todd didn't author this. He didn't make this decision, but he was my mentor that was telling me, you got to believe more in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When you've been in a place for so long, you're like, I can't recreate the stories we talked about at the start of this podcast.
Yeah.
I can't go recreate the beginnings. And so you're just like, you're so afraid and you're insecure. It's like, I don't know people say, if I lost it all, I would build it again. I laugh when I hear that. I'm just like, and then suddenly I was literally there. And it leads to this interesting thing. So I took some time, kind of said the goodbyes, all that stuff. And then I started meeting with companies and started thinking about what the next steps might be. And Zach, I'm telling you, like, it was crazy because I believe I'm a fairly intelligent person, especially in my space and in business and stuff. Like I like to bring that smarts to the table. And I would prepare for these meetings with CEOs in many spaces, software companies, door-to-door companies, other companies adjacent, like marketing and promotion companies, apparel companies. And I would go and I'm not exaggerating, I would just crush these meetings. And I was getting offers that were like, Todd was right. And I would come home at night and I would sit in my little Walmart fire pit. I don't have a fancy fire pit. I have a little $70 one from Walmart, and I would just cry. And then the next day I'd organize myself, do what you do. You put on the Superman suit. I'd go to the next pitch and I would be at a pitch and explain what I can do and where I'm at. And they were like, you could tell they were just like, we want this to happen. And then I would tell them, it's like, well, I just want you to know my next meeting is with so-and-so at 2:00. And you'd see, they'd be like, really? And it was like this experience I had for 6 weeks. But I would go nail these pitches and come home that night and I would just cry. And I was just trying to deal with, like, honestly, that grieving process. Somewhere in the mid to early parts, I met, it was funny actually. The first person I called that wasn't a family member was Damon Price. And the first place I went was Medford. And it wasn't to go work with them. It was like, I'm coming into town. This is real. This is happening. I need to talk to you. And he was amazing. He's, the brother of brothers, right? And he completely understood what was going on. He had my back. He talked through it with me. He gave me advice. And I had a few of those where it wasn't about, hey, can I get a job? It was like, I need your help to guide me. And he told me that he had some discussions with Jordan Binning and Newsun over the last year as they were trying to expand, what they're doing. And I was like, dude, when Jordan was here, like, he embraced everything I did at the highest level. They won everything for like 5 straight years or something. They dethroned Trevor Frank. It was just like, it felt like, man, if I could do marketing with them. And so I went and met with them, and it was crazy to see each other after years.
Yeah.
And this is really a special moment, and it's a little bit intense. So we have a meeting and we catch up, and to be honest, it's going like the others. It's going very, very well. CJ Adamson's in the room, one of my other partners. And we kind of talk about everything. And then he's got to go to a recruiting meeting, and CJ steps out, and it's just me and Jordan. This is my first time talking with him and work, kind of seeing him in years. And he goes like this, bro, you took our banners down. It's cool, I guess. Like, what do you have to say about that?
And he's talking about the banners in
the
Vivint's
cup
gym.
banners. And I mean, I'm like, this is the first time through my meeting with people where I'm not like just winning. And I was like, I mean, he called me on it right there, just that he was waiting, and he did it with some diplomacy privately, but he's all, dude, you took down the banners. And I'm sitting here at his place saying, hey, maybe we could work together.
Yeah.
And, you know, I won't say everything that happened in that conversation, but fortunately, we were able to go through perspective, and I owned different things, and we talked about context, and, you know, we settled it. And that was the moment I knew that I was going to go work for New Sun with Jordan, because that type of leadership and that type of honesty and that type of like being straight up, I'd seen that with Todd, where I was in those recruiting meetings with the C-Boss, where you hear the story, how they like went in the car and they were going to go here and they were crying and they came. I was in the room where Todd was breathing fire on these guys, and it scared some people away, and others to say, I like this. You're going to manage a team. You're going to co-manage, maybe. Like, straight honesty that's trustworthy, the candor and the upfrontness of like, this is what I'm really thinking. Can we have these conversations productively?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, now my mission is this is, you know, so I ended up, I mean, I did. The truth is I had many offers, and I wanted to go build the next future with Jordan, CJ, and New Sun because of the position of their company, because of the talent level of their sales force, because of the choices I'd seen them make with who they partner with and who it serves. Like, I feel like after going through, you know, 4 different acquisitions at a multi-billion-dollar company like Vivint, I would have learned a thing or two about evaluating who's full of shit and who's got something really special.
Mm-hmm.
And that went into the decision, obviously, as well, when it comes to, you know, opportunities. But that's kind of
It's cool.
the catalyst, and that's kind of the story there. And it's been, you know, this last year, it's been interesting, but, you know, people say, Zach, if I lost everything, could I build it again? I actually made the decision to blow up I'm not trying to build that again. I'm building something that's different. And the truth of the matter is I have seen something where I feel the model I was running with these 40, 50 creatives and big payroll budgets and stuff, there is something special about creatives that are running their own agencies, that are dealing with people on the outside. They can see past just their bubble and what they bring to the table, as far as like, well, you're a client, and the accountability of this specific project, let's make it greatness. And we're also dealing with these other companies. And so suddenly I've actually found it's like my ability to streamline as a leader, partnering for media, culture, and everything with individual agencies and contract relationships. I 100% think it's the future. And so anyway, the work of challenging and like building is fun and energizing. It's not just like, hey, I need to go set up competitions over here.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I love it. I think it's cool. And I think it's a few things that are really cool is highlighting the fact that it's like, even though life is happening for you, not to you, it still hurts.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and regardless of anything, and honestly, almost every time I talk to someone where there's like that moment where it could be viewed as something's happening to you and your whole life is flipped upside down, it ends up being the thing that just gets you to the next level. And sometimes we really literally need like that, like push out the door when we're peeking our head through the door and we don't know, or maybe we're not even thinking about it. That goes and opens up a whole new door and a whole new area, which is really cool. And it's cool to see you viewing it that way. And like, it's really, really cool. I'm stoked to see what you're going to do.
I think the hardest part for sure was just, you know, I just have so many people I care about from the past that they don't really understand. They're like, this doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? I think that was the hardest thing. But the truth of the matter is like, we're all grown-ups. You know what I mean? That's the thing, is it's like, no one's coming to save you.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, no one actually really cares about your problems the way you will. And when you really understand that, all kinds of possibilities open up. Like, that's what I said. It's like, I'll be an opportunist. I'll look for the opportunity. You can't see the opportunity if you're like the other thing. It's like, I need to be saved. This is bullshit. Why is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's different.
if you're every time you're giving away accountability, you're giving away your freedom to change the situation you're in.
1000%.
Right. And it's like it's taking extreme accountability over things. Just literally what that is doing is giving you the freedom to go and change your circumstances. And choosing not to take accountability is choosing to give away the freedom that you have to go and change your situation. And it's 100%. I agree with it. I love it. It's powerful. It's awesome. I want to be respectful of everyone's time we've already gone over, but it's a really, really good way to go and end. And then we'll do a follow-up and we'll go see what you go and do. But I'm super excited. My hat's off to you. I appreciate you and you're the man.
Thanks, Zach. It was a real honor to be on the show. And I'm very excited for you. And kind of same thing. I know your guys, Brad, I look up to him. He's like my favorite guy ever. I think he's the most talented person that I'm actually a friend with, And, Kelton and Elliot and all those guys that I know, you guys have your own amazing story. And so thank you for having me here and taking the time.
Always, bro. Always. And everybody for tuning in. Thank you guys. As always, much love. Until next time.